you're not watching your feet, you are going to trip, because if you don't have adequate room. But that was how they needed to accommodate given the existing infrastructure in the area. So again, if you're looking at retrofitting, you do the best you can. If you're looking at starting from scratch, you look at trying to avoid those problems on the front. Now this is back in Bath, Maine, and I showed you that picture earlier that showed the narrow sidewalk. Obviously when they redesigned to accommodate the car, this was their more retail side of the street, and so they opted to keep the sidewalk wider on this side of the street versus on the opposite side of the street, which is quite narrow. Kind of got these out of order, but this is Atlanta. Not exactly your poster child for a picture-perfect building, obviously built in the 60s or 70s, but again, they accommodated your street trees, your street furniture, in a wide pedestrian way. This is that picture in Bath, where you had your storefronts to accommodate your commercial, clear zone for your pedestrian, and then your street furniture, your trees, and that sort of thing. Another picture, just a little bit showing the clear area and reasonable accommodation for that. This is Atlantic Station. Have any of you been to Atlantic Station? It is the brownfield redeveloped area when you're going down I-75. It's off to your right. This is an example of where they took an existing and they cleared out all the old industry and they started from scratch. And so, you know, this is kind of what we were looking at. It's like, okay, they made the same mistake that Portland, Maine had and Bath, Maine had, but they were starting over from scratch, and they still didn't accommodate the pedestrian enough on the sidewalk that if you're trying to encourage that. Then this is Suwanee, Georgia, which is the Suwanee Town Center. Suwanee is located east of Atlanta, going out I-85, I think. I-20, is it I-20 or I-85? This is really what we're shooting for here in Farragut. They started from scratch. This is was until 2010, a really high growth area. And notice how wide this crosswalk is here. And we have pretty wide pedestrian area, but they also accommodated the street furniture, vegetation, and on-street parking, varied facades, cornices, kind of a rhythm with how the height of the building, windows. You have a corner here where you have storefront on both sides on the intersection where you don't have a blank wall, which from an architectural standpoint gives that variety that you kind of crave, where you realize that's why you like things or don't like things. But this is another picture in Suwanee, and again you notice the large pedestrian. Here you have 3 pedestrians, and there's really plenty of room to have 2 people walking together, meeting 2 people walking together. And again, they kept a little bit of a storefront area here. They have outdoor seating area, and here you have some street that's affiliated with this business. And here you have vegetation and the street furniture. The Suwanee Town Center. You see the varied roof lines again. Here they opted to kind of split the sidewalk up and put your street furniture and things in the middle. Not too keen about the sign in the middle of the sidewalk, but again, they provided on-street parking. They provided an area where people could have outdoor seating. Until the vegetation gets mature, you've got to have some kind of shade and stuff like that during the summer months. But what I'd also like to point out in this is this architectural lighting. I have a pet peeve with lighting like this. This is a little better because it's not so tall, but you create a shadow effect on the very area you're really intending to light with a style fixture. You're shooting all the light up rather than down. This again just shows the sign a little bit better blocking the pedestrian path. It gives you a better idea of the on-street parking. This building back here is their city hall. You can't see it right here, but the last slide I'm going to show you street that actually lies between Swanee Town Center and their city hall. Just kind of keep that in mind. This is back on that street in Atlanta, again showing your street, sidewalk, cars parked, your street trees. Same view, just from a different perspective, showing the same way area getting out of vehicles. Again, showing your wider sidewalks. So often we put the character of the building just with how the building looks, and what we're really trying to do is do a full package deal that everything's kind of tied in together. And that particularly when we were talking about the town center district, that it is supposed to be a pedestrian oriented. Obviously, for the bulk of what we have in Farragut is not pedestrian oriented, it is vehicular, suburban type style, but we don't want to preclude the pedestrian because we have so many greenways, and our goal is to interconnect to make it more pedestrian oriented. This goes back to the Atlantic Station area. This is a really good example of a hybrid. You have the big public sign that's more suburban in style. There is nothing about this front area that is suburban in nature. And here's your clear zone for walking. But they recessed their storefront to provide room for on-street. Grocery stores have you go get in, get your food, you go out there and sit and eat and everything. But then they actually recessed their entrance even further to kind of draw people in. And then they jutted areas out like this so that if I'm a pedestrian stepping out to cross traffic, I'm not darting out between cars. A vehicle coming down the road can see me better, but also I'm having to cross less travelway, or vehicular travelway. I just can't help but point out these lights to you because what are they trying to light? See how tall these people are in relation to this light pole? All your people are down here and your lights are lighting everything up here. They may look good in daylight, but the whole goal is to have something that's functional. We really need something that's lower level, actually light where the people are. This is Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Sun Prairie is a small town. At one point in time, really was kind of in the middle of nowhere, but Madison has grown and it really has become a suburb of Madison, Wisconsin. In some ways, Madison is similar to Knoxville, and that has a university, similar sized cities, that kind of thing. And Sun Prairie took an old, it's an older downtown, and then they had the cannery, which they redeveloped the site, kind of like Atlantic Station. And they have numerous developments that are higher density in this somewhat exurbitant rural area, but it's a high growth area because of its proximity to Madison. This road here is a good comparison to Kingston Pike. There's a lot of traffic on this road. It cuts through their downtown. As they reconfigured their downtown to accommodate traffic, they did not shortchange their sidewalks entirely. Question how healthy long-term trees, but those are actually pretty good trees, good-sized trees. Here you see the cornices on your older buildings and a varied roof line. Here's another picture of Sun Prairie. This is what you really shouldn't do, where you have a one-story and then you hop up to a three-story. This isn't really good visual flow. You should have more of a even variation rather than a sharp variation. This is the opposite side of the street of what I showed you, so it's obvious, like Bath, Maine, they decided, okay, we'll shortchange one side of the sidewalk. This is the cannery area in Sun Prairie. They took this old industrial area and redeveloped it. And the lower level is commercial office. Mid-level has some offices, but mostly residential. The area back over here is open space, and then the same similar kind of building as this. They opted to do, these are one big buildings, and they look like one big buildings, rather than a traditional downtown, like what you saw at Spring Valley or Spring Hill or whatever it was in Tennessee, where they're obviously doing separate buildings. Looking at this, the Planning Commission opted that we don't want it to look like one big building. actually want it to look like different buildings, even if they're built as a big building, you want them to look more like a downtown. This is back to Atlantic Station. Notice that there's not a striped crosswalk, but there is a crosswalk sign, and this is at a narrowing point. We encourage people to cross here. Again, they have these jet outs. We encourage kind of impromptu gathering. We have your on-street parking. It goes back to what are they trying to light up with these signs? They should be putting in these lights that should actually do more. And again, kind of a contradiction. You have suburban-oriented signs, and this is not suburban-oriented area. This is back to Swanee, Georgia. Where's the road on this picture? This is actually a crosswalk. Here's your road. You're not going to go through here real fast if you're coming down through here. This kid feels pretty comfortable. And this huge splash pad real close to this. This is the big open space that's in front of their town center. But this is an example of a crosswalk where you're using a variation to get people to slow down as they're driving across it. This goes back to Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. And again, this is one big building, even though they're using very different heights. Kind of like what I pointed out with the Eagles when we did that training a couple months ago. But it looks like one building rather than kind of a traditional downtown. This is the open space that is across the street from the building I just pointed out. This is their town center, their town hall. This truck and this van are on that main drag that I told you about. You are not going to cross this road from this park to get to this town hall unless you want to put your life into your own hands. Because they have crossings farther down, but not really close there. This is back in Bath, Maine, and I wanted to show here was notice this street light. Although it's tall, it is aimed toward the ground. It is lighting the area that it is targeting. You go to Bath, Maine. This is purely a decorative light. It does not have a lot of throw, but it does prevent light from going up. If you have residential areas up here, you don't want your light shining into these residential windows. You want the light to shine down and target. They actually made these very decorative. If you look at them, they actually had holes in the bottom, so that you didn't have that shadow that you often see underneath some lights, how that's open through there. Their goal was to have it fully lit down at the bottom level. Now this is Atlanta, I'm trying to cut that one off, but again, their goal is that you're lighting the bottom part, you're aiming it toward the ground where people are at rather than other buildings. This is Camden, Maine. I've got a series of pictures, and some of them are repeat. Because this is really an example where you take your history, you incorporate it into open space, and you also incorporate it into, I'll call it an anchor tenant. It's a library for their downtown. This here is the entrance to their library. This is kind of an open space outdoor amphitheater area. And the first picture I showed in the slide started this presentation. I am actually just looking the opposite direction. Notice these crosswalks. Daryl's not here, so I can give him a hard time. These are mid-block crosswalks. And they aren't 500 feet apart. They're just about 120 feet apart. If you're trying to get people to function and use both sides, you gotta have them more often, and they don't just have to be at intersections. This is an old Carnegie library. You know how years ago they built a whole bunch of these across the country? This happened to be one of them. It's not a very big building, Camden Community Library. Dan and I walked up there, we were just kind of poking around, and we thought, oh, this is really cool. We walked across this open space, and we looked at this little gazebo and looked out and realized we were looking over the checkout desk in the new library, because the new library is built underground.